The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
Back to the Kaya podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Kambria Davis, and it's been several weeks since I've recorded a podcast episode. So welcome to the reality of life, right? I remember when I started the podcast, I'm like, I'm going to put out an episode every week. That was cute and not likely. However, I'm so excited, so grateful to have one of my dearest friends, Wendy, be a guest on the show.
Hello, friend.
Thank you for being here. I knew I wanted Wendy on the show when I have a whole list of podcast people, like guests and things that I want to talk about. And then when was it that I messaged you? Posted something on social media and it was like, yes, and like now. And so I messaged Wendy and said, hey, will you be on the podcast? And I know that June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And so I was like, we got to do this. And I always laugh because like in the podcast, and we're really not supposed to like say dates and stuff, but like every podcast, I'm pretty sure without fail, I've always talked about the specific date. So it is literally Sunday, June 30th, the last day of the month. But I mean, just like anything else that's important, you know, this is very important information that needs to be spread and shared and recognized and talked about. So, okay, so with that intro, we're going to go into what really matters. So, again, thank you for being here, Wendy. I love you as a human, and some of my favorite memories of my life and moments of my life literally come from thinking about you getting a camera to take a picture or a video.
When I buy the camera, we have fun together, and I love it because it's a very natural relationship, I think, between the two of us. And that doesn't happen very often, but immediately I felt connected to you.
Yeah.
And you're one of those people that I just can't get enough of.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I feel the same. Prior to us recording, we were talking about how we stalk each other on socials so that we can like feel connected.
Yeah.
But I think that there's just like an understanding, and it's not somebody that you have to be with all the time, or it's not like we've spent a lot of time together, just two souls that really know each other.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Wendy, just if you want to start off by letting us know why I would choose you for this particular topic and this particular month, and just share with us like what you have been through.
Okay, so Men's Mental Health Awareness Month is this month. Today's the last day, but it really should be every day of the entire year. So a little background with me is in January of 2022, we got COVID, that dreadful, awful, whatever. And it really affected my husband a lot differently than it affected the rest of us. And immediately, when I say immediately, I mean immediately, he got paranoid. He got anxious, more so than your typical, I mean, we all have anxiety, but this was like next level. I'd never seen anything like it. He became extremely suicidal, to where we were even at one point trying to get him committed because we didn't think he was safe. And it was probably the hardest 20 months of our lives. And when I say 20 months, it was a daily battle to keep him here and to focus on his brain health. See, we really need to get over the stigma, Kambria, and I'll just mention that right now. It needs to be brain health, not mental health. We need to think of it just as if we would our hearts or our lungs or our blood sugar levels. We need to make this a priority. And we tried. We really, really tried for so long. So ups and downs for that 20 months of our lives. He had a break in the symptoms, but I honestly think now looking back, he was just able to hide them easier. He had learned how to cope with them a little bit better for short periods of time. And then the summer of 2023, we saw it nosedive completely. And he ended up dying by suicide. And we found he was missing for 4 days. So it was 4 days of hell knowing that he probably died by suicide, but we couldn't find him. And then we were able to find him, which was a wonderful blessing for us. So when I say 20 months of a lot of hardships and witnessing men's brain health and how important it truly is, and how it can impact not only like me as a spouse, but our children, our family, our friends. This is something that I believe now needs to be my voice. I need to share with people his story. I need to share our family's story and really get out there that brain health, especially for men, is something that's completely overlooked, and we need to do better. We need to do better as a community. We need to have better research. We need to have better doctors who understand what's going on. And, there could have been some underlying, people often ask me, did Brian have any underlying issues? Was he diagnosed with anything? And my answer is no, but that doesn't mean there wasn't something. But what we were doing in our lives and then how it completely changed overnight, it was 100% in my mind caused by that virus. And that's what literally threw him over the edge.
And so that was what I was going to ask you. So leading up to getting COVID, I mean, life was normal. What does that even mean? But yeah, prior and every relationship, every person, everything has their stuff. But basically, once he had COVID, you just saw a whole total shift.
A whole total shift. And we did all of the things. He did all of the things. He tried therapy. He tried medication. He tried anywhere from vitamins to meds to holistic treatments to everything. He did try everything. And he didn't see the results he wanted. But oftentimes that can even become more frustrating, which I know it was for him. He didn't give it a long enough chance. I don't know if he knew how to, right? Like He didn't have that. We had the best neurologist in the state, honestly. Best neurologist in the state we were able to get into. And he said, Brian, I think that this virus did attack your brain. It went through that on that cellular level, but we're just going to watch you. We're just going to watch and see, because we really don't know what to do. We could try this and this and this, and you're doing this. So let's just see how things go. That was kind of how it was left up. And that was infuriating, but even more so for him as the patient. And then he was really reluctant then to seek more treatment after, we're not quite sure.
Yeah. And I just got full body chills, which for me, when I feel that is truth, right? So that's a message of truth being like, if we have, here's the expert of all the experts saying, we don't know, we're just going to kind of observe that. I can imagine what that just felt like and how defeating that must have felt for you, for him, for everyone involved.
As his wife and caregiver, it was really like a gut punch, honestly. And then be like, okay, well, should we come in every month? Like, what do we do? And they're like, well, you could do this occupational therapy. He had developed tremors very similar to MS or Parkinson's. And so he had been tested for everything. Really invasive tests too, Kambria. So it was very exhausting for him, exhausting for me, but even more so for him, especially than being like, well, let's just follow along. And if you get worse or symptoms get worse, then give us a call. Or, I thought, this is what I thought. I thought, okay, we're going to the best doctors. We're doing all the tests. We're going to find out what's wrong, and we're going to be able to treat. And then he will either get better or it'll be managed.
Right.
But that's not the case. That's not how mental health works. That's not how brain health works, which is really unfortunate, because that's where we're losing people, I believe. Just like Brian. I mean, to have that hope like pulled out from underneath you.
Totally.
Like I witnessed it. It was devastating. Absolutely devastating.
Yeah. So, I mean, you made a good point very early on. Like, there are tests for heart health, there are tests for diabetes, there are tests for MS, there are tests, like, there's all these things that we know because we've done so much research, we've talked so much about it, and there's been so many case studies that now there are certain symptoms and tests that are able to say, this is what you have, here's the treatment to manage or to fix. And I think, I mean, we could probably make a whole podcast about the conditioning of Western medicine anyway, right? Like, bring us your problem. I'm an expert, and here's your answers, and you're good, you know? But yeah, I mean, COVID did a number on a number of people and took us all different ways. But I think I really appreciate that you talk about brain health, because this is something that I've not really heard it talked about that way. And I know you have brought light to that, but yeah, like, okay, are we studying the brain? What happens in the brain when somebody has a virus like that? What does somebody's brain look like that, like you said, starts to have major panic attacks or anxiety or suicidal thoughts, versus does it look different from somebody who's not experiencing that? What parts of the brain are firing and not,
Huh? Yeah. And with Brian, with all the testing that he did, there was not a lot that they really know about this psychosis that they can see in current tests unless you've passed. So that doesn't, right. That's why more tests need to be done. Let me just say this. Okay. So let's back up. Brain health. When you have an issue, let's say MS, or you're starting to have Parkinson's type issues, right? Do you know that the average diagnosis takes for brain issues, whether that be Parkinson's, MS, ALS, average of 3 years to be diagnosed? So symptoms, they look at symptoms, they look at length of time, right? They follow you. That's why they say we need to just watch you and see. Because the more symptoms that progress causes, right, more stress on the patient, yet that's how they end up getting the diagnosis. So a lot of the tests well, let's do a baseline, and then let's watch and see what happens next.
But we all know, I mean, obviously I work in the realm of energetics, but what I know for a fact is stress creates far more disease than maybe the activation of the nervous system,
right?
Which the conversations we've had outside of this, knowing Brian, knowing you, knowing your children, everybody's living in fight or flight or fawn.
Yeah.
We know that stress. So they're just like, hey, let's just watch your stress levels go up and see what happens to your disease.
Right. Which means it's going to progress worse. You're going to become more depressed about it. You're going to become more anxious, more distraught about not finding out what's really going on and how to treat or manage. So it seems really backwards. It's like I said, I thought we'll get in there, we'll do all these tests, we'll figure it out, and then at least we would know and we could manage or treat or whatever. But we didn't even get to that point. We did not even get to that point. So back to COVID psychosis. So I have a stat here I printed so I wouldn't get it wrong, Kambria, because I want to make sure I'm accurate. But COVID psychosis, when you get COVID, right? Let's just say about 20% of people who have COVID, about 24%, they end up having like mental health or brain health issues with that COVID. So whether that depression, anxiety, even suicide, like what we saw, suicidal issues. But then out of that, like 24%, most of it resolves within a few months, right? Most of it resolves as you heal. Some become long haul issues like what Brian had, where it stays longer, it stays with you, it bigger, it doesn't seem to really go away. That where we're seeing, but only the long haul issues are about 3% of that 24%. So it's not widely studied because there's not a lot really to study. However, in the last year, we saw more medical journals, more patients with the same thing that Brian had. I've connected with another suicide widow, and literally our stories are parallel to each other. And not only does that validate me and what I saw and what I witnessed, it validates my children and what they witnessed, because this other person's children had the same experiences, saw the same thing. And I'm hoping that now that it's more widely known and we're talking about it and doctors are aware of it and they're seeing it, they can then be able to study and we'll be able to know how to treat people like Brian and be able to save lives and not just say, well, let's wait and see and watch you.
Yeah, I am still flabbergasted, honestly.
It is a lot.
So something too, just for my own benefit, right? Because, and I know, like I've read things or I've heard things, and in honor of showing respect for people who have, like you said, died by suicide, what are the terms, like, because it's not fair to say committed suicide, right? Like, what is, when someone's speaking about somebody who, has passed away this way, what is like the proper terminology and the things that people should be saying instead of committed suicide, because we know that that's not actually how this works.
No, it's not really how it works. So I like to think of it this way. If he had had a heart attack, you wouldn't say he committed a heart attack, right? That was his body, an illness that took his life.
Right.
So I like to say died by suicide. I think that's respectful. I think it shows that it was the illness that took his life. It wasn't him. If it was him, he would still be here. It was it was the illness that changed him. It was the illness that made his brain not work the way it should have. It was the illness that then killed him.
Okay.
And so that's how I like to say, I think a lot of the stigma that we have in our society around suicide starts with how we talk about what happened. And died by suicide rather than committed. Committed puts a lot of blame on that person.
Yeah.
We don't blame someone for having a heart attack or getting cancer or having a stroke. We don't cast that blame. We should not cast that blame as committed suicide. It should be died by suicide. That illness is what took their lives.
Yeah.
And really, like, if we change just that one little thing, I think it allows us to be more compassionate and empathetic to that person who died by suicide, especially that person.
Yeah.
Because there really shouldn't be that blame placed. But as you and I both know, with grief, you have to, sometimes you have to find a thing to blame or a person to blame for it. But least of all, that person should be the person who was ill.
Yeah.
It should be died by suicide, in my opinion.
I appreciate.
But yes, I think we need to change that. We need to change that perspective. There's a lot of things we need to change, especially about men's mental health, brain health, especially because, the best thing I did for myself was get a good therapist. Should be common for all of us to have someone we can talk to and learn from and be able to change a perspective, because when you're struggling, you go inward, right? Your perspective is inward. But when you can open that perspective and open your heart, you see things so differently. Well,
yeah.
My hope is that it won't be something, especially for men, that they would shy away from, that they would think that they're less than or not strong enough. Societal views of men in general, that we could have a whole podcast just on that.
Yes.
But I don't want that to be the case anymore. I want that to be, hey, I have a good therapist. She's awesome. Like, awesome. Good for you. Like, I'm proud of you for going. That makes you even a stronger person, in my opinion, to have that and to want that healing and that perspective. So I would hope that anyone who's struggling would be open to that and find the right therapist for you. Let's just say that too. It could take a little while, and that's okay. It's just like finding the right doctor or finding the right herbs or energy worker or whatever it might be that you need in your life. It could take a little while, but put the effort in because it's totally worth it, and make the effort.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think what's really cool about the times that we live in is there's so many different types of healing modalities that are available to people, right? So you said something that I think was really big. I mean, we do not live in a society that is conducive for men to feel their feelings. That is not the place that we have been living in, been raised in. And I think, what I know, and again, just personally within my own life and the women that I associate myself with, the mothers are trying to raise, myself included, my own son, talk about their feelings and to feel their feelings and to know it's okay to cry and none of this like, you got to be a man, because all of that leads into it, right? So all of that is creating part of this. The other issue, and thank you for clarifying died by suicide, and the way that you put it is profound, because not only does that put blame on them, but it also, I think you've probably seen, puts shame. There becomes this shame around anybody associated with Brian that
Absolutely.
is not necessary and not deserving, because it's been this taboo thing. And then the last piece of that too is like, what are the options? What are the avenues? Having good therapists, and it just, dime a dozen, just like doctors, just like energy healers, like people have to really go out and advocate for themselves. So it is pretty layered. And I think we can both agree as people who identify as women that that's 10 times harder for those that identify as men to necessarily go outward seeking for that help and support.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the best thing that, well, I mean, there's a lot of things my kids are learning, a lot of things, but especially my boys, to put a name to their feelings, right? Not just holding them in, but to be able to talk about them and put a voice to them, not just be angry.
Yeah.
Okay, well, think about that for a minute and then come tell me why you're angry so I can understand you. And that has been a really good learning experience, not only for me, but for my boys especially. I would like them, if we can learn anything from all of this, is to rely on each other, because we really need to step up and take care of our people, but also not be afraid to go to our people and not have that shame that we might need a little extra help, and be able to ask for the help, because at the very end of Brian's life, he stopped asking for help. And I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. I hate that word now, by the way.
I
hate it because it really just shoves everything under the rug. It pushes those feelings away. And he was able to hide this suicidal ideation those last few weeks. It wasn't until that the day before he left that I was like, okay, this is bad. This is the worst I've ever seen it. And he would not go get help. He wouldn't do it. He refused it. And there wasn't anything I could do at that point as the wife.
Sure.
He hadn't acted on it. He hadn't threatened. So the police couldn't get involved. There's so many if, ands, or buts when it comes to mental health. So you can get help or get committed if you do this, this, or this. But there's not a place for people like Brian who are really, really sick. Everything's booked out. Everything is booked out or not available for that immediate help without being committed or without acting upon something. There's a big lapse in our brain health system for critical people who haven't yet harmed themselves, but still have that suicidal ideation. I think in looking at all of this and the therapy that I've done and the energy work I've done and all the things I have done to heal and allow my kids a place of healing is, let's go back to that blame for a minute. You can't blame the person. You can't blame their family. You can't blame anything but that illness. That illness is what caused it. And we have to allow that understanding in order to move forward and heal. We have to allow that to, we have to know that, like, we have to really know it right here in our hearts that that person was ill and that's why it happened. We shouldn't cast blame. That's something that has happened even to me. And I don't talk a lot about this publicly, but a lot of blame was put on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a good thing I have therapy. Honestly, because I know that that's not at all what happened and at all what should be. Like, it's just not.
Right.
It's not. So I'm grateful that I can be like, okay, well, that's your opinion and you can just stay over here now. And I don't need to have that in my life. I mean, I'm dealing with enough as it is. I don't need.
And I think about people who are in your same situation who aren't you, who don't have the courage, the bravery, the resilience. Like, I know you. I know your energetic field and I know your support system. So I think about people, the widows that are dealing with, you said you met this woman who had a very similar story, that are carrying that, where people are placing that blame, that might not have a therapist, not have a good support system, not have the wherewithal. I mean, I just think about the continued domino effect, ripple effect of pain that is caused when people want to put blame, and that, I guess, is my question to you. What do you say to those people who somebody close in their life has died by suicide and they can't stop the blame, whether it be to themselves, whether the blame that they're carrying is, them putting it themselves in a shame, blame sluggy, or outside people putting it on them? Like, what's your advice? What's your input when you see?
Well, I would say, first off, understand that brain health, mental health correlation, right? You really need to know that that was the illness. That wasn't your person. And if anything, you were the one to go to the doctor's appointments, tuck them in at night, beg them to stay. You did everything you could, but when it comes down to it, you can't control that illness. You can't control that illness. And that's what I had to learn. It is something you have to learn, though, Kambria. That was something I had to let go of. I mean, I like to control things. I am very much, let's have a plan, let's do this and get it done, right? Let's not dilly-dally, let's not waste our time. Let's not spin our wheels. That's the kind of person I am. But I had to take a step back and let go of what I couldn't control, which was the illness. I could control the illness. And a lot of times, no one can. No one can. It is something you have to learn. But what I would say is, well, like, I'm trying to make it not too wordy, like put a little bow on it and tie it up. It is a very complicated issue, especially as a spouse, as a caregiver for that person who has a brain illness. And separating the two, your person from the illness, I think is key. Number one. Number two is show yourself as much love and compassion as you did your person. And realize that we are human beings. And this is Vincent. I did Vince. Okay. We're human beings. We're people. We're mothers. We're spouses. And that doesn't mean it could have helped. Like, thinking back, oh, well, if I did this, they would still be here. If I did this, they would still be here. What does that do for us? It puts us in this out of control spin where we cannot even function or see properly, or and it's very easy to do. It's very easy to do. I found myself in that spiral probably the second week, like after the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to even get out of bed at that point, right? Because you're spinning your wheels and what ifs and what ifs and what ifs. And you just can't put your whole thought process on a what if. You really can't. It's a what if. It's not certainty. And looking back at Brian's illness and everything that the kids and I did, everything that we did everything. And by knowing that, and I'm pretty sure most families, spouses, children, they do everything. They love their person. They want their person to be here. They want their person to stay. They want their person to get better. How can you blame yourself for that when you have done everything?
Totally. Hi, Benson.
So I would hope that really give yourself love and grace. Give yourself the love and grace you would your person who was sick too, and make sure that you don't hold yourself to like a higher perfection. We can't do that. And I think in not doing that, that's when you find the peace. That's when you find your heart to fill with love instead of bitterness and anger. And you're really able to focus on the healing journey, because it is a journey. It's something that we will always have with us. I will always have this grief. My kids will always have this grief with them. But if we can change our perspective and allow ourselves to have grace and love, that goes a long way to getting rid of that blame and to not listen to that blame, because you do hear it.
Yeah.
You hear it.
You could get buried under it.
You can get buried really easy, really fast, and then it's even harder to get out of.
Sure. And then like we talked about, then how does that just continue to be in that cycle and affect everybody?
Right.
Yeah, that's big. So it's not even been a year since Bry's passing. So how's you, the kids, what things, I know you've talked a lot about, therapy and helping, but what have you chosen to do as now, the sole matriarch of the family and the kids in holding? I mean, I cannot, and I think that's why when you post stuff and you write it out, we live in a day and age, everybody's just like, I read it because I am so unbelievably moved by you and your strength and your vulnerability. And the biggest thing why we connect is we're both just authentic and we're not scared to talk about the hard shit and real shit. Like we are not, yes, we're going to go deep. And as you know, there's either people are listening to this because they're haters, or they're people that want to go deep with you and I. And so they're here to hear the real, like we talked a lot about stigma, right? So the more that we talk about the things that are taboo and hard and people don't want to share, and, whatever, however, the more that we can take away those shame and blame snuggies as humans. So the question coming back to that full circle is, what have you been doing? What have you learned? And we know how you've kind of been taking care of yourself, but taking care of your children and your community, or the people that have all been affected.
Right. It's been 9 months and 2 days since we found him.
Wow.
So we're close to that year mark. We're 3/4 of the way of the first year, and it went by so incredibly fast, right? Time just continues to move on, and almost like an exponential rate when I think about the timing and where we were a year ago versus now. I've talked about things, a lot of self-care for me, a lot of quiet, thoughtful time, but also doing fun things again. Last night I went to New Kids on the Block.
Yeah.
You guys, I lived my 13-year-old self dream again last night, and it was so much fun.
Yes.
No, go sit down. He loves the camera like I do, Kambria.
Yeah. Is he a Leo? Is he also a Leo?
I think the biggest thing, and I've tried to do this with my children, I think we're being very successful at it, is I booked us a trip and get out of Dodge and go be together. Us as our unit of 5 now. And not only to reminisce and talk about Brian, talking about your person is very therapeutic. Say their name. Talk with your children. Be open and honest. Have that communication. And have fun. That's something that I had forgotten how much I needed in my life, honestly, because I was so busy being the caregiver and the wife, the mom, the business owner, and really trying to keep it all together. I didn't have time for fun. Rarely did I go do something fun because I didn't have the time for it. I couldn't make the time at the time. But I'm really trying to bring that into our healing, is to joy here and pain here. It can coexist, and it does coexist. And we need to enjoy it and recognize it and feel the heartache, also feel the joy. And so for my children, and what I'm trying to be the example of, but not just tell them what they should do, I'm trying to do it with them, is to have more fun.
Yeah.
And so like last night, I saw new kids were coming into town. I'm a blockhead. I was like, I gotta go. How fun will that be? And then doing not just like, hey, let's do a family dinner, but keeping communication open every day. I find that helps too. The kids will talk about, I miss dad today, or do you guys remember this funny story? Or I'm really mad at him today. Okay, let's communicate that. And we're keeping space for each other. And that's also wonderful to see. Like you said, it affects everyone. It affects everyone differently. But you have to remember that, like, I'm not the only one grieving my husband. Like, my kids are grieving my father. His family, they're grieving their brother and son. My parents are grieving their son-in-law. The nieces and nephews are grieving their uncle. It is like an onion, right? Peels and different layers of grief and different feelings every single day. But holding space for that, I think, is the biggest thing. I want my kids to come talk to me. I want them to ask questions. I will answer the questions to the best of my ability. Or I'll say I don't know. But I will be honest with them and show them, like I said, grief is different for everybody, but you can have the joy and you can have the pain. And as you grow, right? I heard this great analogy. I'm pretty sure I sent it to someone, one of those like little TikTok videos about grief. Oh, he's laughing at me. About having like a little stone, like a little rock in your pocket, right? Always with you. And you can feel it all the time. But the longer you go and the more you build your life again, and the more you have your heart open for love again, and you make the space for that healing, you're not going to notice that very often, but it's still there. You'll notice it sometimes. And those times are usually going to be really hard, because they are. And the simplest things, the simplest triggers are what usually set me off now. The littlest thing.
Okay.
It's not, I mean, the big things, Father's Day was hard. Father's Day was hard. But I'll like see a movie, and it was a funny line that he would like totally laugh at, his big heart, his big laugh. And that'll make me kind of sad, right?
Yeah.
You had a good Father's Day.
Because I did a dig hole at the beach.
Yeah, you did dig a hole at the beach. See, we're trying to like do.
Then we went to Lake Tahoe.
We did.
We're trying to do some fun things and create new memories, even on the hard days too.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's good as well.
Two truths can exist.
So So really it's different for everybody. I don't think there's a one size fits all, but there's stuff that does help. And sometimes people will tell me things and I'll be like, what? That helps you? And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's something I should incorporate to my family, into and it is hard. This is hard to navigate the grief and not have your spouse, partner, and be the sole person responsible for your children. It is a lot, but I am really blessed with a great village. So I would hope that if you're also grieving, that you can surround yourself with a good village as well, because that's really what it takes.
Totally.
It takes a village.
And with that village or people, I know something that, has come up for me and you, and we have a mutual friend whose partner also died by suicide. I think there's always the thing of like, well, what do you say? Like when you see that person, I think kind of the taboo-ness is people want to support and they want to show love and they want to show up. And often people are like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. People project their own stuff, right? Like, well, if that happened to me, I wouldn't want anybody to call me or text me, so then they don't call or text. Or I don't know what to say, so I'm just not going to say anything, So what's been your experience around that? What have you learned around that? Again, what's your personal opinions and advice to people of when somebody does, have to go through this very painful journey, the people around them, their village, what are some of the things they can do to support or say? And I know it's different for everyone, but what have you seen?
I've seen all of it. I've seen all of it. For me, I think saying even just thinking about you. It was a few weeks ago, and I was really having a harder day, Kambria. I was a little more emotional. Things were, my feelings were literally in my eyeballs, tears. It was just a harder day. And I had one of his friends send me a text. Just, we love you. We're thinking of you. You're in our thoughts and prayers. That's all I needed that day. It literally was like, okay, it's been like almost 9 months. This friend still loves and cares about us, even though we don't see him every day. But just that cute little short, sweet text. All I needed to know that day, that I was still loved and they were still thinking of us. So it could be a symbol of that. Acts of service. I am trying to not let that feeling or thought to serve someone go unnoticed. If I get a thought about someone, I'm reaching out immediately, even if it's just a thinking of you.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're the most profound. I have been blessed. We have been blessed. We've had, food dropped off. I had food so packed in my freezers out in my garage that my sister was playing Jenga to get everything in. People were so generous and kind doing yard work for us. My whole yard was like, all the leaves were taken up. Within a matter of a few minutes, I had so many people in my yard. My neighbors are wonderful, and they had seen a need and came and did it. And the calls, the cards, the texts, even speaking their name, that goes a long way. Oh, you haven't forgotten him.
Yeah.
Yeah. We love him. We miss him. Anything like that really goes a long way. When you lose someone to an illness, like a brain illness like this, I think the grief can be very disjointed. You can be sad, you can be angry, you can be mad, you can be emotional, you can be kind of like apathetic in a way too. You can be exhausted and tired. I don't think I've ever been this tired, and feel honored, Kambria, that I can share this story and hopefully let people understand a little bit more how it affects families too, like me and the children and our extended family, raising awareness about it. We need to not be afraid to talk about suicide, or if someone has suicidal ideation, I hope and pray that they could reach out to someone that loves them, that they love, because we need him. We needed Brian. We needed him. And the world was a better place, and it is a better place with you in it. We need to be more willing to not be afraid to ask for help and to admit that we're not okay.
No.
We need to have that safe community, that safe I don't want to say world like this. We really need to strive for that. That should be our goal. It should be our goal to have that kind of place where anyone who's struggling could ask for help and there would be no projection, no shame, no, oh, you're fine, or just go, whatever. Pills are not bad, but just take a pill and relax. You can't relax this away,
Totally.
But I hope that we can create a place for that. But it starts within our own community, like even the Kaya community. What a wonderful place you've built for all. Come as you are, right?
Yeah.
We need to have that. That needs to be not only our motto, but like the way we live. We need to
Right.
have that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, imagine, I did a workshop the other night and I talked about people just want to feel seen.
Mhm.
And we're all so terrified to show the dark sides of ourselves or the weak sides or the sides that we all struggle with. And the more of us that just start to talk open and vulnerably about the things that we struggle with, that we're not perfect at, the more that allows other people. And I think that's a big piece of how this works is like, let's talk openly about what you've been through. Let's talk openly about what we all experience. Because when we start to do that, what I have seen is, I've known a handful of people who have had close people in their life die by suicide. I have not seen the amount of conversation about it that I have seen by you. And I think that is very powerful to continue to talk about that. And that is what the Kaya community is at. Whatever events or things, come as you are. It doesn't matter. If we just all could have a few people that love and support us and will hold space and know that, we are loved and seen, what a powerful impact. Powerful.
Such powerful impact. And that's probably what I would want to maybe leave as my final words. Really, truly come as you are. Be vulnerable. Be honest with you where you're at, because people care and they listen and they naturally want to invite you in, right? When we're not honest, think about a conversation where you had with someone where you knew they were not telling you the truth. You knew they were hiding things, right?
Yeah, not my fave.
No, but really, when we are raw and vulnerable and honest, that's when we build those long-lasting connections and we make those friendships that mean the world to us. When we can be raw and vulnerable and on this whole journey, this whole 9 months, I knew immediately if I could share my voice, it would be the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. We need to be raw and honest about it, but also I'm choosing the perspective of joy and pain together, living together, being all those feelings all at once, and how powerful it can be to put names to them and thrive with both. I know that Brian would want us to thrive. He would want us to continue to live our lives and have experiences and make memories together. And that's really what your loved one would want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do it. Do it. Even if it's hard. Because some days it is darn hard, Kambria. It's hard. But I still do it because I want to have a good life. I am happy. I am doing well considering. I mean, we're truly blessed. We're truly blessed. I have very strong, resilient children.
Mm-hmm.
And they're good kids. So it is fun to celebrate their wins. And, dad's not there, but we're still celebrating. And that's what we should. We should still celebrate.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you again for being on. I am sending so much love to you always, to your children, to your everyone, and to Brian.
Yeah.
And Brian, wherever he is and whatever he's doing, thank you, Brian.
I think he's close. My light's been flickering the whole time.
Cool. Yeah. He's like, I'm here.
He is. I think they're closer than we realized, our loved ones, after they passed. And I definitely feel him. I feel his healthy self a lot.
Cool.
And that's reassuring. Whatever your beliefs are, I think our loved ones still care about us and they're still very close and very connected. And when you sit and listen, pretty powerful sometimes.
Totally. Oh, well, I love you, friend. Thank you so much. And we'll talk. Good to see you. And we will talk to you soon.
Okay.